In 2009, when I was still just a dumb kid eating dirt, a group of some incredibly talented modders unveiled for the first time GTA Alien City. It was an ambitious project which replaced the whole game map with an equally big one created and populated by the mod authors, depicting the foreign desert planet of Andarias, filled with its sprawling futuristic cities and unique landscapes. Nearly all of the game's 300 pedestrians and more than 200 vehicles were replaced with bizarre and outlandish new creatures and transports that fit the new setting. A unique storyline was created, completed with missions, in-game cutscenes, animations, interiors, and even...
Какая разница? Мочим всех.
Yeah, voice acting. And this whole basically new game could be yours entirely for free. Which is why I'm really angry to tell you that there are people right now selling reshade presets. And spoilers, reshade is free. So what is happening? Okay, first off, before we even begin, you might ask, what the hell is this about? Cause last time I checked, mods were still free, right? And you could download them from a dozen of sites and for almost any game you can think of. And you'd be correct. However, in the past 5 years or so, a new trend has been emerging where more and more mods started getting put behind a paywall and you have to straight up give money to gain access to them. Believe it or not though, this trend of paid mods first began with Valve back in 2015 when they announced that you could now sell modifications directly in the Steam workshop. And guess which was the first game that this new feature was available for? Of course, Skyrim. Who else would it be? Not really surprising considering that both companies are strong supporters of modding, and a considerable chunk of Valve's own portfolio consists of games that initially began as modifications. And look, modding is hard, it takes a ton of time and lots of knowledge, but despite that, up until that point, making mods for video games was seen as more of a hobby that was done purely out of passion for the games that we all love. So it also wasn't surprising when the paid mods feature was eventually cancelled after a negative reception. But the idea was now out there, and I guess once someone tried and saw that, oh, people are actually willing to pay for my stuff, the rest followed, cause why would they be doing all this hard work for free? And this is where we are now, where pretty much anything goes. Graphics mods, gameplay scripts, character models, and of course the worst of all, reshade presets. Now that you're up to speed, back in July I asked you guys in a community post if video game mods should be free or paid, and a crushing majority of you unsurprisingly said that they should be free. But chances are, during the introduction of this video, you probably felt two types of ways. On one hand, yes, you were frustrated that someone is profiting off of a free tool like Reshade, but on the other hand, you probably felt like the creators of Alien City deserved some sort of financial compensation for their incredible amount of work, even if it is just a small donation. And that is why this poll isn't really representative of the bigger picture. For that, we need to look at the comments below the post where a majority of the people agreed that some mods do indeed deserve a form of financial support. And sure enough, in a previous poll that I did where I put a third choice with the corresponding answer, most people didn't hesitate to pick that one. And despite the big gap in the number of voters between the two polls, I think we can conclude that the consensus among the majority of the people on whether a mod should be free or paid is... it depends? It depends on what exactly? Well, taking a look at the comments again, there seems to be a repeating pattern here too. Many people have pointed out directly or indirectly towards big mods, total conversions like the aforementioned Alien City. Someone has also given an example with Blue Shift, a fan-made remake of the original Half-Life expansion pack, but for Black Mesa, which itself started as a fan-made project. Or Stalker Anomaly, which is so big that it's used as a base for creating other mods. But here's a little caveat about all these humongous mods that I just mentioned. Despite their impressive size, they're all free. Are you starting to see why so many people are angry at everything else that isn't of this magnitude and still asks for money? Oh, but it's one-of-a-kind t-shirt that says poop. I don't care, bro, I ain't paying 30 bucks for it. What is this, YouTuber merch?
I mean, no offense, but I think that you might turn heads on the runway for the wrong reasons.
What's wrong with the way I'm dressed?
But okay then, if there is a quote-unquote an agreement on what's acceptable to be paid or not, then why is there still so much controversy surrounding this topic? Well, because of the nature of modding itself. When I got into modding some 15 years ago, mods were purely seen as passion projects and not as a job opportunity. And the current environment of paid mods is anyway similar to that of AI generated art. You have the moral dilemma, you have the legal aspect of it, and then you have the contents of the mods themselves, which is a whole different topic. Mods using assets from other games, lazily made or low quality mods that cause crashes, and probably a first from a few days ago, one of the most popular graphics mods for GTA 5 called Quant 5 was found to contain malicious code that apparently wipes clean the hard drives of people who use the mod without paying for it. So, from my understanding, it was intended as an anti-piracy measure, which caused an absolute hellstorm in the GTA modding circles. It completely killed off the reputation of the mod itself, probably lowered the trust in the modding community as a whole, and eventually Take-Two stepped in and basically finished it off, which led to the mod being cancelled. So, where does that leave us, and what's next? Well, this trend will surely continue to grow until at some point companies will either decide that they've had enough and just pull the plug on all these paywalled mods, or they will jump on the train and try to monetize this thing themselves. And both options are just as viable. Still, in July this year, the creator of VR mods for Red Dead Redemption 2 and Mafia got hit with a DMCA in order to remove those mods from his Patreon page. A few months before that, in January, Crytek took down a photo mode modification for Crysis Remastered, which was also behind the Patreon. And most recently, EA came out with a statement that they forbid paid mods altogether, but then completely backtracked on it after receiving criticism. So it would seem like opinions on the topic also vary greatly between the different gaming communities. Regardless of what happens, I've seen some people get really heated on this topic, but you might have noticed that throughout this whole video, I mostly avoided mentioning any mod names or their authors, not only to avoid any doubt of biases, but also because at the end of the day I believe that it's not for me, you, or anybody else but the IP owners to decide what happens with their own property. So I advise you to limit your opinions to the comments below, as I'm curious and would like to hear what you guys think on this very divisive topic. And with that, thank you for watching, consider supporting the channel by liking, subscribing and donating with super thanks. And of course, don't forget to buy my ENB preset, which I simply stole from someone else, changed a few sliders to, and then named with the original name, Gesha's ENB Graphics.